My wife demanded we take separate cars. Then my son revealed, "It's a setup, Dad, she planned this." We had reached the midpoint to the venue when Jaden's behavior shifted. He went silent, adjusting his seatbelt nervously and gazing through the glass. I noticed his image in the passenger side window, and he appeared distressed. "Is everything all right, son?" He remained quiet initially. When he eventually responded, his tone was quiet and uncertain. "Dad, may I share something with you?" "Absolutely, you can share anything with me." Another extended silence, then in a flood of words that struck me like a punch to the gut. "It's a setup, Dad. She planned this against you." I hit the brakes hard, swerving to the roadside so suddenly that the vehicle behind us blared its horn in frustration. My pulse was racing as I faced my son. "Jaden, what exactly did you say?" His expression was wide with terror and remorse mixed together. "Mom, she's orchestrating something terrible for tonight." I overheard her phone conversation. "Before I continue, I need you to do something quick for me. Press that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and mention your country in the comments. I'd appreciate knowing where you're tuning in from. Thanks. My name is Malcolm, and I'm going to share a story that transformed my existence forever. A tale of romance, deception, and realizing that sometimes those nearest to you are plotting your downfall. 15 years ago, I wed Keisha. She represented everything I believed I desired in a partner. Gorgeous, captivating, and from a household that my parents completely cherished. Our families had maintained close ties for years, and when Keisha and I began our relationship, everyone declared we were ideal together. I was youthful, inexperienced, and prepared to commit. She was my initial love, my first in every way. Reflecting now, I understand I was so anxious to create a life that I never truly invested time to genuinely understand the woman I was wedding. But at 25, I believed love could conquer everything. Our initial years seemed positive, or at least I believed they were. Keisha appeared content, encouraging, and when Jaden arrived 2 years after our wedding, I felt my existence was fulfilled. I had a gorgeous wife, a healthy child, and aspirations of creating something significant with my life. I dedicated myself to becoming the finest husband and father possible. I maintained 2 employment positions to ensure Keisha could remain home with Jaden during his formative years. When she expressed interest in redecorating our home, I took on weekend construction projects to finance it. When she fantasized about visiting Hawaii, I conserved every spare dollar for 6 months to realize it. I recall one specific occasion that demonstrates how far I would go for her contentment. Keisha had always desired to study photography, so I secretly reached out to every photography studio in town until I discovered one offering private instruction. I paid for 12 months of sessions in advance. Funds we honestly couldn't spare at that time, simply to witness that joy on her face when she unwrapped the gift on her birthday. Another instance when Jaden was approximately 5, Keisha mentioned missing her grandmother's ring that had been handed down. She'd misplaced it somewhere in our house during one of her organizing sessions. I devoted 3 complete weekends searching every corner of our residence, looking beneath furniture in storage containers, even examining the vacuum bags. I never located that ring, but I witnessed how meaningful it was to her knowing I cared enough to search. These weren't elaborate displays to me. They were simply what you do for someone you cherish. I wanted Keisha to understand that her happiness mattered to me, that I was prepared to work diligently and make sacrifices to provide her the life she merited. As years progressed, I continued advancing professionally. I was determined to establish security for my family. Each promotion meant extended hours, increased responsibility, but also greater financial stability. Keisha seemed proud of my achievements, frequently boasting to her friends about my accomplishments. Then, 3 years ago, everything transformed. I received the advancement I'd been pursuing for years, regional manager at Marcus & Associates, a respected consulting company. The compensation was everything I'd dreamed of, but it accompanied substantial requirements. Suddenly I was traveling frequently, working late hours and managing critical projects. Rather than complaining, I viewed this as my chance to finally provide my family everything they deserved. With my new role, I began developing a business strategy for my own consulting company. I spent my evenings after work researching, networking, and establishing industry connections. 18 months ago, I finally made the jump. I utilized our savings and secured a business loan to launch Malcolm Consulting Solutions. The beginning was challenging. I was essentially managing 2 full-time positions, handling my duties at Marcus & Associates while developing my own clientele. But the effort was rewarded. Within 8 months, my business was flourishing beyond my greatest expectations. We secured several major contracts, including one with a technology startup preparing for significant expansion. The income was arriving faster than I'd ever anticipated. I assumed Keisha would be delighted. We could finally afford the house she'd always desired, the vehicle she'd been considering, the family trips we'd been postponing. I imagined us becoming closer as a family now that financial pressure was no longer weighing on us. Instead, something peculiar began occurring. The more successful my business became, the more withdrawn Keisha became. It began subtly. She'd be browsing her phone during meals, barely acknowledging when Jaden or I attempted to initiate conversation. When I'd return home enthusiastic about securing a new client or completing a significant deal, she'd offer a distracted, "That's nice, honey," without even glancing up from whatever occupied her screen. Then she began going out more frequently. "I need to clear my thoughts," she'd say, collecting her purse and keys. "I'll return later." These outings became more regular, sometimes 3 or 4 times weekly. When I'd inquire about her destinations, she'd provide unclear responses about driving around or visiting the shopping center. I attempted to be understanding. Perhaps she was struggling with my frequent absence during the business launch period. Maybe she needed time to adjust to our changing situation. I suggested we take a weekend getaway together, just the 2 of us. But she said she wasn't prepared for that type of commitment, with my schedule being so unpredictable. The phone conversations were what truly began to concern me. Keisha had always been sociable, but suddenly she was receiving calls at all times. She'd step outside to answer them or move to another room and speak quietly. When I'd ask about it, she'd claim it was her sister Aaliyah or her friend Jasmine experiencing some difficulties. But something felt wrong. The way she'd quickly conclude calls when I entered a room, the way she'd turn her phone screen away from me while texting, the secretive smile she'd sometimes display while typing messages. I didn't want to be the husband who accused his wife of things without proof, but the indicators were becoming increasingly difficult to dismiss. Still, I convinced myself I was being suspicious. Keisha and I had created a life together. We had Jaden and we'd overcome challenges previously. 6 months ago, circumstances took another direction. Keisha began mentioning her uncle Darnell more often. She'd known him throughout her life, she explained, but they'd recently reconnected. He was experiencing a difficult period and required family support. I met Darnell at a family gathering and he appeared to be a respectable person. Mid-30s, well-presented, articulate. He was courteous to me, interacted with Jaden, and seemed to blend well with Keisha's extended family. I didn't consider him much initially, but then I began noticing his vehicle parked in our driveway when I'd arrive home from business trips. When I'd inquire about it, Keisha would explain that Darnell had been assisting with some household tasks or had stopped by to check on us while I was away. "He's just being a caring uncle," she'd say. "You know how my family operates. We support each other." I wanted to trust her. I needed to trust her. The breaking point occurred 3 weeks ago. My business had developed to where we were prepared for a major launch event, a celebration to introduce Malcolm Consulting Solutions to potential investors and strategic partners. This was the culmination of everything I'd been working toward. The morning of the event, I was filled with nervous excitement. I'd been preparing my presentation for weeks, verifying every detail to ensure everything would be flawless. This was my opportunity to demonstrate to investors what Malcolm Consulting Solutions could become with proper support. "I'm so proud of you," Keisha said over breakfast, and momentarily she seemed like the supportive wife I'd fallen in love with years earlier. "This is going to be incredible." But then, as we prepared to leave, she made an unexpected proposal. "I think we should drive separately tonight," she said, adjusting her earrings in the mirror. I paused while straightening my tie. "Separately? Why?" "I have several errands to complete before the party. You know how I am." I'll want to stop by the store, perhaps get my nails touched up. I don't want to make you late for your own event." It seemed logical enough, but something about her tone troubled me. There was an insistence in her voice that didn't match the casualness of her explanation. "Keisha, this is a significant night for us. I'd prefer we arrive together. The errands can wait." She turned to face me then, and I saw a flash of something in her eyes. Irritation, perhaps even anger. But it disappeared so quickly I wondered if I had imagined it. "Please, I promise I'll be there on time. I just need to handle a few things first. It's better this way." Before I could argue further, she added, "Besides, Jayden should ride with you. This is your night, and he should be there to witness his father in his moment of triumph." The way she said it felt wrong somehow, but I couldn't identify why. And she was correct about one thing. I wanted Jayden there to see what we'd built together as a family. "Fine," I said, though the word felt heavy in my mouth. "But please don't be late. This presentation is crucial." "I'll be there," she said, kissing my cheek. "I wouldn't miss it for anything." An hour later, Jayden and I were in my car heading toward the hotel. My son was dressed in his finest suit, a smaller version of mine that Keisha had insisted on purchasing for the occasion. He was excited, chattering about the party and asking questions about my business. "Dad, are you nervous?" he asked as we stopped at a red light. "A little," I admitted. "This is a significant night. Many important people will be there." "You'll do great," Jayden said, with the confidence that only a 10-year-old can have in his father. His faith in me was both comforting and humbling. Whatever happened with Keisha, I knew I had to ensure Jayden felt secure and loved. He was the most important thing in my life. We had reached the midpoint to the hotel when Jayden's behavior shifted. He went silent, adjusting his seatbelt nervously and gazing through the glass. I noticed his image in the passenger side window and he appeared distressed. "Is everything all right, son?" He remained quiet initially. When he eventually responded, his tone was quiet and uncertain. "Dad, may I share something with you?" "Absolutely, you can share anything with me." Another extended silence, then in a flood of words that struck me like a punch to the gut. "It's a setup, Dad. She planned this against you." I hit the brakes hard, swerving to the roadside so suddenly that the vehicle behind us blared its horn in frustration. My pulse was racing as I faced my son. "Jayden, what exactly did you say?" His expression was wide with terror and remorse mixed together. "Mom, she's orchestrating something terrible for tonight. I overheard her phone conversation." The world seemed to shift around me. "What precisely did you hear?" Jayden looked down at his hands, his voice barely audible. "I was supposed to be sleeping, but I heard her talking in the kitchen. She was speaking with Uncle Darnell, but she wasn't speaking to him like an uncle." "What do you mean?" "She was speaking to him like she used to speak to you before you started working so much, like she loves him instead of you." My chest felt constricted, like I couldn't breathe properly, but I forced myself to remain calm for Jayden's sake. "What else did you hear?" "She said something about tonight, about the party. She said, by the time he gets to the party, it'll be too late. I've sent you the forged records, documents and everything. Just display it on the big projector so his investors—" Jayden's voice trailed off. She said, "What about forged documents?" I don't know what all the words meant, Dad, but she sounded happy, like she was excited about something bad happening to you. And Uncle Darnell, he was laughing. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process what my 10-year-old son was telling me. Forged documents, the projector at the party venue, my investors. "Jayden, this is very important. How many times have you seen Uncle Darnell at our house?" "Lots of times. He comes over when you're not home. Mom told me not to tell you because she said you'd be jealous of her having a friend. But they don't act like friends. They act like you and Mom used to act." The pieces were falling into place, creating a picture I didn't want to see. My wife and her supposed uncle, the distance between us, the secretive phone calls, and now some plan involving forged documents and my business presentation. "Dad, are you mad at me?" Jayden asked, his voice breaking. I reached over and pulled him into a hug. "No, buddy, I'm not mad at you at all. You did the right thing by telling me. You might have just saved us both from something terrible." But even as I comforted my son, my mind was racing. What kind of forged documents could Keisha have access to? What was she planning to show my investors? And why? Even if she was having an affair with Darnell, why would she want to destroy the business that was finally giving our family financial security? Unless destroying me was the point. I pulled out my phone and called Jamal, my business partner and closest friend. "Malcolm, you on your way? The investors are starting to arrive." "Jamal, I need you to check something for me. Is the presentation laptop secure? Has anyone else had access to it?" "What do you mean it's been locked in the office all day? Why?" "I think someone might be planning to sabotage tonight's presentation. Can you double-check all the files, make sure nothing's been altered or added?" There was a pause. "Malcolm, what's going on? You're scaring me." "Just check it, please. And Jamal, if Keisha shows up before me, don't let her near any of the equipment. I'll explain everything when I get there." "Okay, but hurry. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Just be careful." I hung up and looked at Jaden. "We're still going to the party, buddy. But I need you to stay close to me tonight, okay? No matter what happens." He nodded, though I could see he was still scared and confused. As we drove toward the hotel, I tried to piece together what Keisha might be planning. If she had somehow obtained business documents and forged them, what would be her goal? To make me look like a fraud in front of my investors, to destroy my reputation. But why? Even if she was having an affair with Darnell, why would she want to destroy the business that was finally giving our family financial security? Unless destroying me was the point. The hotel parking lot was full when we arrived. Through the large windows, I could see people mingling in the ballroom, networking and enjoying the cocktail hour that preceded my presentation. These weren't just random guests. These were investors who could take Malcolm Consulting Solutions to the next level. Business leaders I'd been cultivating relationships with for months. If Keisha's plan was to humiliate me in front of them, the damage to my reputation could be irreparable. Jamal met me at the entrance, his face grim. "We have a problem," he said quietly, leading me away from the crowd. "I found files on the presentation laptop that weren't there this morning. Financial records that make it look like you've been embezzling from client accounts." "That's impossible." "I know it's impossible, but the documents look real, professional. If someone had projected these during your presentation, I would have looked like a criminal in front of everyone who matters in this industry." Jamal nodded. "Malcolm, how could someone have accessed our systems? These files are sophisticated forgeries. This isn't something someone did in their spare time." I thought about Keisha's behavior over the past few months. The secretive phone calls, the time she spent on her computer when she thought I wasn't paying attention, the way she'd ask casual questions about my business operations. "My wife," I said quietly. "I think my wife has been planning this." "Keisha? Malcolm, why would she do something like that?" Before I could answer, Jaden tugged on my sleeve. "Dad, there's Uncle Darnell." I looked where he was pointing and saw Darnell near the bar, dressed in an expensive suit and talking to several of my investors. He looked comfortable, confident, like he belonged at my business launch party. But as I watched him, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. He kept checking his watch and glancing toward the entrance like he was waiting for something, or someone. That's when I realized the full scope of what was happening. This wasn't just about sabotaging my presentation. Keisha and Darnell were planning to frame me for embezzlement in front of a room full of industry leaders and potential investors. My reputation would be destroyed. My business would collapse. And then what? Would they disappear together with whatever money they could steal from the business accounts? But they'd made one critical mistake. They hadn't counted on Jaden overhearing their conversation. They hadn't expected me to discover their plan before it was too late. "Jamal," I said, "I need you to call Detective Terrence from the Financial Crimes Unit. Tell him we have evidence of attempted fraud and embezzlement." "Are you sure about this, Malcolm?" "Once we involve the police." "I'm sure." "And Jamal, I need you to make sure that projector is set to record everything. I have a feeling we're going to want evidence of what happens tonight." As Jamal walked away to make the call, I knelt down to Jaden's level. "But I need you to do something very important for me. I need you to stay with Uncle Marcus tonight. Don't leave his side no matter what happens. Can you do that?" Jaden nodded solemnly. Marcus was Jamal's older brother and someone I trusted completely with my son's safety. "Is something bad going to happen to Mom?" Jayden asked. I touched his face gently. "I don't know, son, but I promise you, no matter what happens, you're going to be okay. You did the right thing by telling me the truth. Remember that." As if summoned by our conversation, Keisha walked through the ballroom entrance. She looked stunning, her hair perfectly styled, wearing the black dress I'd bought her for our anniversary last year. She moved through the crowd with confidence, smiling and greeting people like the perfect supportive wife. But now I could see what I'd been blind to before. The way her eyes constantly scanned the room, locating Darnell. The subtle nod they exchanged across the crowded space. The satisfied smile that played at the corners of her mouth. She was here for the show. She wanted to watch me be destroyed. I watched as she made her way over to the technical setup, where the laptop and projector were positioned for my presentation. But Jamal was already there, standing guard and deflecting her casual questions about the equipment. Detective Terrence arrived 15 minutes later, along with his partner, Detective Andre. I'd worked with them before on a case involving financial fraud at one of my client companies, and they knew me to be reliable and honest. "Malcolm," Detective Terrence said quietly, "Jamal filled us in on the situation. Do you have any actual evidence besides your son's testimony?" "Check the laptop. Someone uploaded forged financial documents designed to make me look like I've been stealing from clients. The digital footprint should tell you when and how those files were added." Detective Andre was already examining the computer with a portable forensics device. After a few minutes, he looked up and nodded to his partner. "The files were uploaded remotely last night from an IP address registered to Malcolm's home internet connection, but the digital signature shows they were created using software licensed to a Darnell, Washington." Everything was falling into place. Keisha had used our home computer to upload the files, but Darnell had created them using his own software. They'd left a clear digital trail pointing directly to both of them. "There's more," Detective Andre continued. "These aren't just forged documents. They're copies of real financial records that have been altered. Someone with inside access to the business accounts would have needed to provide the original templates." I felt sick. Keisha had access to our home computer, where I sometimes worked on business documents. She had been watching, learning, gathering information for months, while pretending to be the supportive wife. "What do you want us to do?" Detective Terrence asked. I looked across the room at my wife, still playing her part perfectly, chatting with investors and accepting their compliments about what a successful husband she had. "I want to give my presentation as planned," I said, "but I want you to be ready to make arrests the moment they try to execute their plan." The next hour was surreal. I moved through the crowd, making small talk with investors and partners, accepting congratulations on the business's success, all while knowing that my wife and her lover were planning to destroy everything I'd worked for. Jayden stayed close to Marcus, but I could see him watching me with worried eyes. I smiled and waved at him occasionally, trying to project calm I didn't feel. At 8 o'clock, Jamal called for everyone's attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us tonight to celebrate the launch of Malcolm Consulting Solutions. Malcolm has built something remarkable here, and we're excited to show you the opportunities ahead. Please, Malcolm, the floor is yours." I walked to the front of the room, my heart pounding. The projector screen behind me was blank, waiting for my presentation to begin. In the crowd, I could see Keisha watching with anticipation. Darnell was positioned near the technical equipment, ready to make his move. "Thank you all for being here," I began. 18 months ago, I had a dream of creating a consulting firm that would... I started with my planned presentation, clicking through slides about market opportunities and growth projections. But I was watching Keisha and Darnell, waiting for them to make their move. It came during the financial overview section. As I was explaining our revenue growth, I saw Darnell move toward the laptop, but instead of uploading the forged documents as they'd planned, he found Jamal blocking his access. "Excuse me," Darnell said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "I think there might be a technical issue with the presentation. Some concerning financial documents just appeared on the system." This was it. This was their moment. But instead of the forged embezzlement records they expected to display, something else appeared on the screen behind me. Security camera footage from our home showing Keisha and Darnell together in ways that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. The room fell silent. I turned to look at the screen, pretending to be as shocked as everyone else. "What? What is this?" I asked, my voice carrying clearly in the quiet room. More footage played. Keisha and Darnell at the kitchen table going over documents and laughing. Audio of their phone conversation that Jayden had overheard, including Keisha's voice clearly saying, "By the time he gets to the party, it'll be too late." The room erupted in murmurs and shocked whispers. I saw investors looking back and forth between me, the screen, and Keisha, trying to understand what they were seeing. Keisha's face had gone white. She was staring at the screen in horror, then at Darnell, then at me. For the first time in months, I saw real emotion in her eyes, but it was panic, not remorse. Not, "Malcolm," she started to say, stepping forward. "I can explain." "Ladies and gentlemen," Detective Terrence announced, showing his badge as he moved through the crowd, "we need everyone to remain calm. We're conducting an arrest related to attempted fraud and embezzlement." "This is insane," Darnell protested. "I was helping you catch her. She's the criminal." But even as he protested his innocence, Detective Andre was reading them both their rights. The evidence was overwhelming. The digital trail, the security footage, the testimony we'd prepared. As the police led them away, Keisha looked back at me with an expression I'd never seen before. It wasn't love or regret or even anger. It was pure calculation, like she was already planning her next move. "You don't understand," she called out as they reached the door. "He threatened me. He said he would hurt Jayden if I didn't help him." It was a desperate lie, and everyone in the room could see it. The security footage had shown her as an eager participant, not a victim. After the police left with my wife and her accomplice, I found myself standing in front of a room of stunned investors and colleagues. My business launch party had turned into something from a crime drama. "I apologize for the disruption," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "As you can see, I've recently discovered that someone very close to me was attempting to sabotage this business and frame me for crimes I didn't commit. I want to assure you all that Malcolm Consulting Solutions operates with complete integrity, and we welcome any investigation into our business practices." To my surprise, the response was supportive. Several investors approached me afterwards, expressing their admiration for how I handled the situation and their continued confidence in the business. "Frankly," said Monique Jefferson, one of the major investors, "the way you uncovered and stopped this fraud attempt shows exactly the kind of analytical thinking and attention to detail we want in a consulting partner." The business not only survived the scandal, it thrived. The story of how I caught my wife attempting to frame me actually enhanced my reputation in the industry. Clients saw it as proof of my investigative abilities and ethical standards, but the personal cost was devastating. Going home to an empty house, explaining to Jayden why his mother wouldn't be coming home, dealing with the media attention, it all took its toll. The legal proceedings dragged on for months. Keisha and Darnell both tried to blame each other, each claiming they'd been manipulated by the other. But the evidence was clear. They had been planning this together, motivated by greed and their affair. During the investigation, more disturbing details emerged. They hadn't just planned to frame me for embezzlement. They had been slowly draining money from business accounts for months, planning to disappear together after my reputation was destroyed. The forged documents were meant to make it look like I was the one stealing, covering their tracks while they escaped with over $200,000. Keisha was sentenced to 5 years for fraud and conspiracy. Darnell got 7 years, as the court determined he'd been the mastermind behind the technical aspects of the scheme. 6 months after the trial ended, I made a decision that surprised everyone, including myself. I sold the house where Keisha and I had built our life together and moved across the state. The memories were too painful, and I wanted a fresh start for Jayden and me. We settled in a smaller city about 3 hours away, where I could run my consulting business remotely while giving Jayden a chance to heal from the trauma of his mother's betrayal. He'd been seeing a counselor, and while he was resilient, I knew the experience had affected him deeply. It was in our new city that I met Kayla. I was at a coffee shop working on a client proposal when I looked up and saw the most beautiful woman I had ever encountered. She had warm brown eyes, natural hair pulled back in a simple style, and a smile that seemed to light up the entire room as she chatted with the barista. But it wasn't just her beauty that caught my attention. There was something about her presence, her energy, that made me feel instantly drawn to her. It was different from anything I had experienced before, not the desperate need to settle down that had driven me toward Keisha, but a genuine, deep attraction to another person. I watched her order coffee and find a table near the window. She pulled out a book and started reading, occasionally looking up to people watch or smile at something in the text. Everything about her seemed genuine, unguarded. I wanted to approach her, but I hesitated. It had been less than a year since my divorce was finalized, and I wasn't sure I was ready to put myself out there again. But something about Kayla, I'd heard the barista use her name, made me want to try. I gathered my courage and walked over to her table. "Excuse me, I hope you don't mind the interruption, but I couldn't help noticing your book. Is that the new Maya Angelou biography?" She looked up at me, and for a moment I thought I saw recognition flash across her features, but then her expression changed to something like panic. Yes, it is," she said, closing the book and starting to gather her things. "It's very good. I've been meaning to read it. Would you recommend—" But she was already standing up, clearly trying to escape the conversation. "I'm sorry, I have to go," she said, not meeting my eyes. "I'm late for something." She rushed toward the exit, leaving her coffee half finished on the table. I stood there, completely bewildered by her reaction. Had I come across as threatening somehow? Was I that out of practice with talking to women? Over the following weeks, I found myself hoping to run into her again. I started frequenting the coffee shop at different times, hoping to catch her during her regular visits. When that didn't work, I tried other places around town. The bookstore, the library, the park where I took Jaden to play. I finally saw her again at the grocery store 2 weeks later. She was in the produce section, carefully selecting apples when I approached. "Kayla," I said softly, not wanting to startle her. She turned, and again I saw that flash of panic in her eyes. "I'm sorry. I don't mean to bother you. I felt like we had a connection the other day, but then you ran off. Did I do something wrong? Do something?" For a moment she looked like she might run. Again. But then she seemed to steel herself, taking a deep breath. "You didn't do anything wrong," she said quietly. "It's complicated." "I'm good with complicated," I said, trying to keep my tone light. "I'm Malcolm, by the way. Malcolm Washington." The moment I said my full name, her face went completely white. "Oh, God," she whispered. "You really don't remember me, do you?" "Remember you? Have we met before?" She looked around the grocery store, clearly distressed. "Not here, I can't. If you want to understand, meet me at Riverside Park tomorrow at 2 o'clock by the big oak tree near the playground." Before I could respond, she was gone again, abandoning her shopping cart and rushing toward the exit. I spent the rest of that day and all the next morning wondering what I was walking into. Clearly, Kayla knew me from somewhere, but I couldn't place her. Had we gone to school together? Had she been a client? Was she connected to the legal troubles with Keisha? At exactly 2 o'clock, I found her sitting on a bench under the oak tree she'd mentioned. She was nervous, wrapping and unwrapping her hands around a tissue. "Thank you for coming," she said, as I sat down beside her. "Thank you for agreeing to explain. I've been going crazy trying to figure out how I know you." She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the playground where a few children were playing. Finally, she spoke. "My name is Kayla Morrison. We went to the same high school together, though we didn't really know each other then. I was shy, quiet. You probably never noticed me." I searched my memory, trying to place her, but came up empty. "After high school," she continued, "I went to community college. You went away to State University, but we both ended up back in our hometown after graduation. That's when we met." I still don't remember. "It was at Jasmine's birthday party, about 15 years ago. You were there with some friends from work, and I was there alone. I didn't know many people." A faint memory stirred. Jasmine's birthday party. I remembered the party, but not much about the specific people who'd been there. "We talked for about an hour that night," Kayla said, her voice getting softer. "About books, about our dreams, about what we wanted to do with our lives. You told me about your plans to start your own business someday. I told you I wanted to work with children, maybe become a teacher. She paused, looking directly at me for the first time. I fell in love with you that night, she said simply. I know that sounds crazy. I know you can't fall in love with someone in one conversation, but I did. The admission hung in the air between us. You asked for my phone number before you left the party, she continued. You said you'd like to see me again. I gave it to you, and I spent the next week waiting for you to call. I was starting to get a sinking feeling about where this story was going. But you didn't call me. 2 weeks later, I saw the announcement in the newspaper. You were engaged to Keisha Thompson. The pieces were starting to come together, but I still didn't understand the full picture. Kayla, I'm so sorry. I honestly don't remember getting your number, and I definitely don't remember deciding not to call you. If I had your number and didn't use it, there must have been a reason. There was a reason, she said, her voice becoming bitter. Keisha made sure of it. What do you mean? 3 days after the party, Keisha showed up at my apartment. I didn't even know she knew where I lived. She told me you'd asked her to come talk to me. My blood was starting to run cold. She said you felt bad about leading me on at the party, but that you were already in love with someone else. She said you were too kind to hurt my feelings directly, so you'd asked her to explain that you wouldn't be calling. Keisha told you that? She was very convincing, very sympathetic. She said you were a wonderful man, but that you were already committed. Your heart belonged to someone else. She made it sound like you were trying to be gentle with my feelings. I felt sick. Even 15 years ago, Keisha had been manipulating situations to get what she wanted. But that wasn't all, Kayla continued. 2 years later, after you were married, she approached me again. This time she had a very different kind of proposition. What kind of proposition? Kayla took a shaky breath. She said she needed a favor, a big favor. She said that she and her husband, you, were trying to have children, but that she was having medical issues with her eggs. The world seemed to stop spinning. She offered me $10,000 to donate my eggs for an in vitro fertilization procedure. She said it would be completely anonymous, completely legal, and that I'd be helping a couple achieve their dream of having children. Oh my God. But it wasn't legal, was it? It wasn't done through proper medical channels. It wasn't anonymous, and it wasn't consensual in any way that mattered. What do you mean? She took me to a clinic that wasn't exactly legitimate. The doctor there didn't ask the right questions, didn't follow proper protocols. I thought I was donating eggs for anonymous in vitro fertilization. I had no idea she was planning to use them herself with her own husband's genetic material. The implications were hitting me like physical blows. Jaden, I whispered. Yes. Jaden is my biological son, Malcolm. I'm his birth mother. I stood up from the bench, pacing away from her and then back again. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my marriage, about my son, was crumbling around me. But there's more, Kayla said quietly. After the procedure was done, after Keisha was pregnant, she came to see me one more time. What did she say? She told me that if I ever tried to contact you or the child, if I ever came near your family or tried to claim any parental rights, she would have me arrested for harassment. She said she had connections in the police department who would believe her over me. That's insane. That's illegal. But I didn't know that then. I was young, scared, and alone. I had no family to help me fight her. My parents had passed away in a car accident when I was 19. I had no siblings, no extended family who cared enough to get involved. I was completely on my own. The picture was becoming clearer, and it was more horrible than I could have imagined. She also told me something else, Kayla continued. She said that if I caused any problems, if anything happened to interfere with her happy family, she would make sure that something terrible happened to my mother. But you just said your mother passed away. She was talking about my foster mother, the woman who had taken care of me after my parents died, Mrs. LaToya Williams. She was elderly, living alone, and completely defenseless. Keisha knew exactly who she was and where she lived. I sat back down heavily on the bench. So you disappeared. I took the rest of the money she paid me and moved to another state. I got a job as a teaching assistant and tried to build a new life. But I never stopped thinking about the child I'd helped create. I never stopped wondering if he was healthy, if he was happy, if he looked like me, or like you. How long have you been back? 6 months. I moved back here around the same time you did. I heard through old friends that you'd gotten divorced, that there had been some kind of scandal with your wife. I thought maybe it would be safe to come home, but when you saw me at the coffee shop, I panicked. I'd spent so many years imagining what I might say to you if I ever saw you again, but when it actually happened, I ran. I was terrified that you'd recognize me, that you'd be angry about what had happened, or worse, that you wouldn't believe me. I reached over and took her hand. Kayla, I am so sorry. I'm sorry for not remembering you from the party. I'm sorry Keisha manipulated both of us. I'm sorry you went through all of that alone. She squeezed my hand, tears flowing freely now. There's something else you need to know. What? I want to have a DNA test done. I need to know for certain that Jayden is my biological son. And if he is, I want to be part of his life, not as a replacement for the mother who raised him, but as someone who loves him and has always loved him. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of medical appointments, legal consultations, and emotional conversations with Jayden. I had to explain to my 10-year-old son that the woman he'd called his mother his entire life wasn't actually his biological parent, and that his real biological mother was someone who had been kept away from him through threats and manipulation. Jayden took the news better than I expected. He was curious about Kayla, asking dozens of questions about her and wanting to know what she was like. When I told him she was the woman from the coffee shop he'd seen me trying to talk to, he said, "She seemed nice and pretty. Can I meet her?" The DNA test results came back 3 weeks later, confirming what we all already knew in our hearts. Kayla was indeed Jayden's biological mother, but more than that, the medical records we obtained through legal channels revealed the full extent of Keisha's deception. The clinic where the egg donation had taken place was indeed operating illegally. They had been shut down years ago for performing unauthorized procedures and failing to follow proper medical protocols. Keisha had paid them to use Kayla's eggs with my genetic material, but she'd had the resulting embryo implanted in her own womb. Legally and medically, she was the gestational mother, the woman who carried and gave birth to Jayden. But genetically, Kayla and I were his biological parents. The legal implications were staggering. What Keisha had done constituted fraud, theft of genetic material, and a host of other crimes. But more than that, it meant that Kayla had legal standing as Jayden's biological mother. However, rather than pursuing a custody battle, Kayla had a different idea. "I don't want to take him away from you," she said. "You're his father in every way that matters. You've raised him, loved him, been there for every important moment of his life. But you're his mother. I provided the genetic material, yes, but I've missed 10 years of his life. I don't have the right to suddenly show up and demand to be his parent." "Kayla, you didn't miss those years by choice. They were stolen from you." "I know, but that doesn't change the reality of what Jayden needs now. He needs stability, consistency, and love. He's been through enough trauma with what happened with Keisha. What she proposed instead was something beautiful and unconventional. She wanted to be part of Jayden's life gradually, as someone he could get to know and hopefully come to love, without the pressure of trying to replace the maternal figure he'd lost. I want to be his friend first, someone he can trust and rely on, and maybe if he's comfortable with it, we can explore what it means for me to be his biological mother as he gets older." But as Kayla and I spent more time together, something else began to develop between us. The connection I'd felt that first day in the coffee shop grew stronger with every conversation. She was intelligent, kind, thoughtful, and incredibly resilient. Despite everything she'd been through, she'd managed to build a successful career as an elementary school teacher and maintained her capacity for love and trust. "I need you to know something," I told her one evening as we walked through the park together. What I'm feeling for you. It's not just because you're Jayden's biological mother. It's not gratitude or some misplaced sense of obligation. What is it then? It's love. Real, genuine love. The kind I thought I felt for Keisha, but now realize I never actually experienced. She stopped walking and turned to face me. "Malcolm, I've been in love with you for 15 years. Through all the pain, all the separation, all the fear, I never stopped loving you. But I need to know that you're not just trying to create some kind of ideal family situation. I'm not. I promise you, I'm not." She studied my face in the lamplight. "Then show me." I kissed her then, right there under the streetlight in the park, where she'd told me the truth about our son. It was nothing like the desperate, needy kisses I'd shared with Keisha during our early relationship. This was deeper, more meaningful, full of promise and genuine affection. 6 months later, I proposed to Kayla on the anniversary of the day she'd told me the truth about Jaden's parentage. Not because I felt obligated to create some nuclear family, but because I couldn't imagine my life without her in it. Jaden was thrilled about our engagement. He'd grown to love Kayla over the months they'd spent getting to know each other, and the idea of her becoming his stepmother and his biological mother felt natural and right to him. "Does this mean I can call her Mom?" he asked me the night after I proposed. "That's something you'll have to discuss with her, but I think she'd be honored." Our wedding was small and intimate, just close friends and family, with Jaden serving as my best man. As Kayla walked down the aisle in a simple but elegant dress, I realized that this was what love was supposed to feel like. Not the desperate need to settle down that had driven my first marriage, but a genuine partnership based on mutual respect, shared values, and deep affection. But our happiness was interrupted 6 months later by news that would rock our world once again. Detective Terrence called me at work with an update on Keisha's case. "Malcolm, I need you to sit down for this." "What's wrong?" "We've uncovered evidence of additional crimes committed by your ex-wife, crimes that directly affect you and your son." "What kind of crimes?" "Identity theft, medical fraud, and conspiracy. It's related to the circumstances surrounding Jaden's birth." My heart sank. "What did you find?" "We found records showing that Keisha coerced Kayla into the egg donation through threats and intimidation. She also forged medical documents to make the procedure appear legal when it wasn't. We already knew most of that. But we also found evidence that she was planning to sell information about the illegal procedure to other couples who were desperate for children. She was essentially running a black market fertility operation. The implications were staggering. Not only had Keisha stolen my son's biological mother from him, she'd been planning to do the same thing to other families. "There's more," Detective Terrence continued. "We found correspondence between Keisha and several other individuals who were involved in similar schemes, people who were threatening other young women into donating genetic material." "Other women like Kayla?" "Exactly. And based on the evidence we've uncovered, the district attorney wants to file additional charges against Keisha and everyone involved in the operation." The new charges meant that Keisha's sentence would likely be extended significantly, but more importantly, it meant that other victims would finally get justice. Kayla took the news surprisingly well. "I'm glad they caught her," she said. "If there are other women out there who went through what I did, they deserve to know the truth and get their children back. Are you okay with testifying again?" "I'm okay with whatever it takes to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." The trial lasted 3 months. Kayla's testimony was powerful and heartbreaking, detailing not just what happened to her, but the years of fear and isolation that had followed. Other victims came forward with similar stories, creating a picture of a systematic operation designed to exploit vulnerable young women. Keisha was ultimately sentenced to 15 years in prison. Darnell, who had been involved in the documentation and financial aspects of the fertility fraud, received 12 years. But the most satisfying moment of the entire trial came when Keisha was given the opportunity to make a statement before sentencing. "Your Honor," she said, standing in her orange jumpsuit, "I want to apologize to my former husband and son for the pain I've caused them." It sounded like a prepared statement, lacking any real emotion or genuine remorse. "I made mistakes and I'm willing to pay for them, but I want everyone to know that everything I did was motivated by my love for my family and my desire to give them the best life possible." Even from the gallery, I could see the judge's skeptical expression. "Ms. Thompson," the judge said, reviewing his notes, "the evidence presented in this case shows a pattern of manipulation, fraud, and callous disregard for the well-being of others, including the child you claim to have been protecting. He paused, reviewing his notes again. Your actions resulted in a young woman being separated from her biological child for 10 years and multiple other families being torn apart by your fraudulent schemes. You have shown no genuine remorse for the suffering you have caused, and you continue to present yourself as a victim rather than taking responsibility for your choices. This court sentences you to 15 years in state prison with the possibility of parole after 12 years. As the bailiff led Keisha away, she looked back at me one more time. But instead of the calculating look I'd seen the night of my business launch party, her expression was one of defeat and desperation. 2 years later, Kayla and I welcomed our first child together, a daughter we named Destiny. Watching Kayla hold our newborn daughter, seeing the joy and love in her eyes, I was struck by the contrast with my memories of Jaden's birth. With Jaden, Keisha had seemed focused on the performance of being a mother, rather than the reality of it. She'd been more concerned with getting the perfect photos for social media than actually bonding with the baby. But Kayla's love for Destiny was immediate, natural, and genuine. She was the mother I'd always hoped Keisha would become, but never did. Jaden, now 12, was thrilled to have a little sister. He had adapted beautifully to calling Kayla Mom, and their relationship had developed into something beautiful and authentic. "She's so small," he said, carefully holding Destiny for the first time. "Was I this small when I was born?" "Even smaller," Kayla told him, stroking his hair. "You were the most beautiful baby I'd ever seen, even though I only got to see pictures of you for so many years." "I'm glad you're here now," Jaden said simply. "I'm glad we found each other." 18 months later, we welcomed our son Andre, and 2 years after that, our youngest daughter Tanisha. Our house was full of laughter, chaos, and the kind of genuine love I'd never experienced during my marriage to Keisha. Kayla threw herself into motherhood with the same dedication she brought to everything in her life, but she also pursued her professional dreams, eventually leaving her teaching position to start her own educational consulting business. "I want to help other children who are struggling," she told me. "Kids who feel lost or forgotten the way I felt for so many years." Her business, Morrison Educational Solutions, became incredibly successful. She specialized in working with children from difficult family situations, helping them navigate educational challenges while dealing with trauma and instability at home. But Kayla's real passion project was her charitable work. Every year she organized massive donation drives for orphanages throughout our state, providing everything from clothing and toys to educational supplies and scholarships for aging-out foster children. "I know what it feels like to be alone in the world," she explained when I asked her about her motivation. "If I can make sure that other children don't experience that same isolation, then something good will have come from what I went through." The donations weren't small gestures. We're talking about tens of thousands of dollars worth of supplies and services each year. Kayla had built her business specifically to generate the revenue needed to fund these charitable efforts. "This is how I honor the years I lost with Jaden, by making sure that other children don't lose the support and love they deserve." 5 years after Destiny's birth, I received a letter that surprised me. It was from my parents, who had remained distant since the scandal with Keisha. "Dear Malcolm," the letter began, "we know we don't have the right to ask for your forgiveness, but we want you to know how deeply we regret our role in pushing you toward marriage with Keisha." The letter went on to explain that they'd been so focused on the social and financial advantages of a union between our families that they ignored whether Keisha was actually right for me. "We see now how happy you are with Kayla and your children," they wrote. "We see the man you have become, the father you are, and the love you've built with someone who truly deserves you. We're proud of you for following your heart instead of our expectations." The letter concluded with a request to meet their grandchildren and hopefully rebuild our relationship as a family. I discussed it with Kayla, who encouraged me to give them a chance. "People can change," she said, "and Jaden, Destiny, Andre, and Tanisha deserve to know their grandparents if that's possible." The reunion was awkward at first, but my parents made genuine efforts to connect with Kayla and the children. Over time, we were able to rebuild a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation. My father pulled me aside during one of their visits. "Son, I owe you an apology. We were so concerned with what looked good on paper that we forgot what actually matters. Kayla is a remarkable woman, and you're lucky to have found each other." "We're lucky to have found each other again," I corrected him. "We were meant to be together 15 years ago, but circumstances got in the way." "Do you think you would have been ready for this kind of love back then?" I considered his question seriously. Maybe not. Maybe I needed to go through everything with Keisha to understand what real love actually looks like. 10 years have passed since that terrible night, when my world fell apart at my business launch party. Malcolm Consulting Solutions has grown into one of the most respected firms in our industry, with offices in 3 states and a reputation for integrity that was forged in the fire of that early scandal. Jaden is now 22, a college graduate working as a software developer and engaged to a wonderful young woman named Brianna. He's grown into a thoughtful, ethical man who treats people with kindness and respect. "I learned from watching you and Mom handle everything that happened," he told me recently. "I learned that you can go through terrible things and still choose to be good people." Destiny is 18 and heading to college in the fall, with plans to study social work. She wants to follow in Kayla's footsteps, helping children and families in crisis. Andre, now 16, is a gifted athlete and student who volunteers at the same orphanages his mother supports. Tanisha, 14, is showing signs of inheriting her mother's business acumen and her father's analytical mind. As I write this, Kayla and I are preparing to celebrate our 15th wedding anniversary. She's in the kitchen making dinner, laughing at something Tanisha is telling her about school. Andre is helping Jaden fix something in our garage. Destiny is video calling her boyfriend from college. This is what a real family looks like. Not the performance I lived through with Keisha, but the genuine love,
support and connection that happens when people choose each other every day. But the story doesn't end there. Last month I received a call that brought everything full circle. "Malcolm, this is Detective Maurice Williams from the State Parole Board. I'm calling to inform you that Keisha Thompson has applied for early parole. My first instinct was to object, to fight, to keep her incarcerated for the full term of her sentence. But when I discussed it with Kayla, she had a different perspective. If she's genuinely changed, if she's learned from what she did, maybe it's time to let her try to rebuild her life. After everything she did to you, to us. Malcolm, holding on to anger and resentment only hurts us. Doesn't change what happened, and it doesn't make our lives better. If she's truly reformed, then good for her. If she hasn't, that's her choice to make." At the parole hearing, I was given the opportunity to make a statement. Both Kayla and I chose to attend, not to oppose her release, but to speak about the impact of her crimes and our hopes for the future. "Keisha Thompson's actions caused immeasurable pain to my family," I told the parole board. "She separated a mother from her child, defrauded investors, and ran criminal schemes that hurt multiple families." I paused, looking at Keisha, who sat quietly in her orange uniform. "But we've also learned that healing doesn't come from seeking revenge. It comes from building something better from the pieces that are left behind. If Miss Thompson has truly changed, if she's learned from her mistakes and is committed to living an honest life, then we support her opportunity for parole." Keisha was granted early release 6 months later. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she moved to another state and found work at a nonprofit organization helping other women transitioning out of prison. She never tried to contact us, and we never tried to contact her. That chapter of our lives was closed, and we were all better for it. As I finish writing this story, I want to share the lessons I've learned from this journey. Never give up on love. Real love isn't just about finding someone who fits into your life plans or meets your family's expectations. It's about finding someone who sees your heart, challenges you to be better, and chooses you every day. Kayla and I found each other twice, once as young people who weren't ready for what we could become together, and again as adults who had learned what love actually means. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong in your relationship, don't ignore those feelings. I ignored so many red flags with Keisha because I wanted to believe in the life we were building together. If I had trusted my instincts earlier, I might have saved us all a lot of pain. Children are resilient, but they need truth. Jayden weathered the storm of learning about his true parentage and his mother's crimes because we were honest with him and gave him the support he needed to process difficult information. Children can handle truth better than they can handle lies and secrets. Forgiveness is for you, not for them. Forgiving Keisha didn't mean excusing what she did or pretending it didn't matter. It meant choosing not to let her actions continue controlling our lives. Forgiveness freed us to build something beautiful from the ruins of what we had lost. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you leads to the best thing in your life. If Keisha had never betrayed me, I might never have found my way back to Kayla. If we hadn't been forced to confront the truth about Jayden's parentage, our son might never have known his biological mother. The pain was real, but so was the joy that came afterward. Today, as I look around at my family, Kayla helping Tanisha with homework, Andre and his friends playing basketball in our driveway, Destiny calling to tell us about her latest academic achievement, Jayden and Brianna planning their wedding, I know that every struggle was worth it to get to this moment. Love is worth fighting for, truth is worth pursuing, and sometimes the family you're meant to have isn't the one you start with, but the one you find along the way. My name is Malcolm, and this is my story of betrayal, discovery, and finding my way home to the love that was always meant to be mine. This is my story. Now tell me, what would you have done if it were you? Was there something I should have done better or shouldn't have done? Before you go, please don't forget to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share it with your loved ones. We post videos every single day on this channel, so it's a good thing if you check out other videos here too. Don't forget to comment your thoughts and opinions on this story. We'll see you in the next story. Bye.